So Richard Dawkins writes The God Delusion, and I get a hold of this book. And in this book, I'm reading all about how people who think that God is real and who go to church are absolutely no different than adults who think that cartoons and The Lion King are actually real.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so the whole framing of like how like so he does such a great job of disenchanting the entire world, you know, but the moral hammer that he's holding behind his back, actually it's more like a knife. The moral knife that he's holding behind his back that he's going to stab you with is that if you think that there is a God and you go to church, then you are no different ultimately than the men who hijacked those planes and put them into the towers and took out the towers. Like it's like super clear to a 15 or 16-year-old when you read that book that I don't think that Richard Dawkins would have had an issue with somebody saying that, like that was what he thought or
I want to
what he would suggest.
I want to share my screen just for a second. Patton Oswalt says, "Dear people citing the Bible, it's a cool book with some wonderful passages, but it also has ghost sex and giants and super babies and demons. It's why we don't make laws based on Game of Thrones, My Little Pony, or The Legend of Zelda." Somebody posted that one recently. And I'd seen it before, but I'm like, it might not be such a bad idea to make laws off Legend of Zelda.
I would beg to differ with that comment greatly.
But
I think that we do make laws and policies that are very much based on the notions in the Legend of Zelda.
It almost sounds like people are presuming this Christian nationalism. It's almost like they were afraid that if the Bible could be validated as having any truth whatsoever, that they're afraid that that would be justification for people to get a hold of the laws and turn society into in what their view would be a completely horrible place.
Yeah.
And as a person who aspires to follow Jesus Christ as much as I possibly can, I don't want Christians running the place because they had their shot in the Middle Ages and in the Reformation, and they were killing people.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I see their point. I don't want Christians in charge either.
Yeah. So, but that commenter,
and let me just clarify that. And the reason for that is because you would get a bunch of stage 3 ideologues in charge. You would not get wise elders.
Right.
If you had wise elder Christians running things, I think that would be fine. But we don't want these stage 3 ideologues running around in government.
Right. And the ironic part about that comment is that he's only demonstrated his own stage 3-ness.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because he can only assume that the people that are adversaries, his adversaries, they could not know any more than him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
right.
like the absurdity of the Legend of Zelda. It's like, well, okay. So,
well, I mean, just as a spoiler alert, not a spoiler, but as a teaser for the audience, you have been developing some kind of content low key about a couple of narrative things. One of them being the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and another one being the Legend of Zelda, and how there actually is some transformational wisdom that can be extracted from these things.
Yeah. I'm a huge. So when you and Sean were talking, he was going on about Pokemon and stuff like that. So, but yeah, which is, in my generation too. But I've been a huge Legend of Zelda fan since I was a kid. They're very, very deeply integral games that I still play all the time. They're very deeply ingrained in my maps of what's meaningful, and like how in my identity, how I see myself, how I understand where I come from, and what is mine to do, what I'm capable of, what I should do, what I can do, what's available to me, that kind of stuff. And and also it's also a great way of understanding the barriers that are in my way.
Mhm.
Uh, you know what I'm saying? The obstacles that will need to be discovered and overcome and things like that. It's all there. It's kind of fascinating. But yeah, I think that the commenter is right in the camp of the type of person that I think I'm trying to highlight, that kind of emerges victorious as the dominant narrative and the dominant way of being or way of viewing the world. In when 9/11 happens, Richard Dawkins writes his God delusion. And in my experience, it's 2005, 2006, and now YouTube is out. Like YouTube's like coming out.
Right.
People are sharing videos on the internet and things like that. So not
That's a
only,
wicked platform.
yeah. Um,
Demonic.
so
Backslide. Only backsliders use that thing.
yeah, right. So there's this now you can watch Richard Dawkins. Now you can not just read his book, but now you can put a face to the name. And not only that, you can watch the face, you can watch the person actually talk and converse and dialogue in live, or in a conversation with another person
On demand.
on demand.
You can
Right.
just search it and bring it up. Bam. You don't have to wait for the show to come on
Right.
Thursday at 8/7 Central.
So now you've got to think about this. Like what you said, like those four horsemen, I can remember watching hundreds and hundreds and thousands of videos of Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris or Daniel Dennett or Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah.
Watching all of them go on this, I guess I'll call it a crusade. Not so much with Christopher Hitchens. If you ever watch Christopher Hitchens speak, he's actually a very thoughtful and considerate and probably a pretty wise guy. He's
Yeah.
he's pretty good.
I
But
listened to Sam Harris today. I listened to him give a lecture on the moral landscape,
mhm.
and it seemed like an atheist version of J.D. Martin.
Haha,
You know,
that's
it's
great.
all
Yeah,
it's all a bunch of post hoc rationalizations that presume stage 3 atheism.
yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. So I read The Moral Landscape a little while after The God Delusion. It's that doesn't come out till like 2015, 16, I think, something like that. I'm a lot older at that point. So yeah, you get these guys now masses, like tons and tons of people can watch them on YouTube, and they become um basically internationally known as the reason they're called the four horsemen is actually like a biblical reference. Like these are the guys who are going to take out religion. Like and and they would tell you, like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris would tell you, like, no, it is our goal to get rid of religions. Like religions are not necessary. They cause unnecessary pain and suffering,
Yeah.
and this, that, and the other thing. And I can remember at this point, being in high school and then starting to go to university, like go to college, and really, really absorbing myself with a lot of this information, um a lot of these types of, I wouldn't call them arguments, but these types of uh, vain and profane babblings is what they are.
Yeah, it looks like that book came out in 2011, September 13th, 2011.
Okay. So then something really, really good, really great happens is that the internet's out, and
Well, I just want to pause you right there before you say that. I just want to say that because there's people talking about Hitchens they enjoyed him too. I just want to say that, like, I feel a kindred spirit when I hear atheists because I join them in the rejection of the stage 3 Zeus model god. You know,
right.
the god of James White and Leighton Flowers, the modified Zeus, type of God, I reject that God too, and I understand why they would reject it. I think they stop short. I think they don't realize that maybe they should read a little Spinoza before they just throw the idea of God completely out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
They're rejecting a certain model of God, and I join them in the rejection of that God.
Yeah. Um,
So I can listen as I don't know. I'm kind of in league with them to a certain degree. I can get something
yeah.
out of them to a certain degree because of that.
Yeah. I full-heartedly agree with that. Um, so I think there's another significant event, and this is all from my perspective, of course. There's another significant event in this little timeline, and it's um you can't really find anybody in the world at this point that is, at least from my vantage point, was able to compete with these guys. It's like
Mhm.
they had they had the ace in their back pocket, which was just set was just to go 9/11. We don't need religion.
Yeah.
We've matured as a species beyond that. Evolution is true. Just get over it. If there is no God, God didn't create the world. You have to let's look to science. And that that phrase, like the moral landscape, the intent of the moral landscape that Sam Harris writes, his sole intention is to ground morality in the biological slash scientific facts of the world. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I find his arguments like I want to give his premise a fair shot, but I find his argument severely lacking.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea of religion, like it's really a Western idea that religion is the worship of this external deity.
Mhm.
And then you go more to the East, and religion is really about creating the best version of you that can be done.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's sort of left off of the table in the rigid confines of this framing of evolution versus creation. Like, don't you know that like Eastern religions have their creation stories too? But
Right.
you never saw like these four horsemen really taking a dig at Eastern religions, because like, first of all, it's not in their purview, and also, it would have, if they started to do that, I feel like the Eastern religions probably had some people who would have been able to respond in a wiser way, and they probably leaned away from that. They probably wouldn't have responded in a conquering manner or a rivalrous manner. They would have they you know they probably would have dealt with them differently. But we did get some religious people responding to them, and that was a huge, for me,
I mean,
that
you
was
do have like in China, if you look up the top 10 bloodiest wars ever, the top uh China has 5 in the top 10 that are Chinese civil wars.
wow.
And make the top 10.
Wow.
So
On the internet, you get, all of these conversations. Like, I remember there's a video of Richard Dawkins going and speaking with this woman, Wendy something. And she's an evangelical Christian who runs a non-for-profit organization called the Concerned Women for America or something like that. And so so Dawkins is very much isolating and approaching evangelical Christians in America, like precisely. And he's telling them how, well, most of Europe is atheist like me, and you Americans are kind of just way super beyond behind the curve, and you're actually like pretty dumb. And the whole 9/11 thing that happened, you don't see how you're just as dangerous as the terrorists and from Al Qaeda that ran those planes in the tower, and like, it's almost like he's instigating them in a lot of ways, and he knows it, and it's really kind of disgusting to come from a quote unquote intellectual or academic man where he's going around as a sophist rather than a a person who's going to invoke more wisdom or profit to that person or well-being to that person. It's disappointing. But then you get this debate on YouTube, and it takes place at the University of Notre Dame, and it's between William Lane Craig and Sam Harris. Look that up on YouTube.
Those guys they annoy me equally.
So for me, this is like the pinnacle of the whole atheist evolutionist versus the evangelical creationist. Yeah. This debate is the pinnacle of this timeline. And once this debate takes place, I feel like the whole thing falls apart, and you start to see how, all the way back to Darwin, where we started, the whole thing was totally bunk.